Hey everyone, guys. I hope I'm audible and visible. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? Today we're going to talk about parajumbles again. In the previous sessions, we did cover a bit basics on parajumbles. Today we have further bit different structured questions and questions from the previous CAT papers as well to be solved. So let me get you to the slides. I hope my slides are visible too. So let's get started with the topic. So if we talk about parajumbles, as we have discussed before, they are more about the sentences which are jumbled for us, and we need to figure out a structured format, right? A structured, coherent, meaningful paragraph out of these sentences. Okay, so this is what we are looking for to arrange these sentences in a certain manner that they give us a structured paragraph. Okay, so for this we would have some 4 to 5 sentences which are given to us. They're jumbled for us. One of the question type can also be when you have the first and the last sentence as fixed sentence, and you're supposed to figure out the sentence sequence for the middle 4 sentences. Okay, so there are various strategies to solve these question types, whether it is question structure wherein you have first and the last sentence fixed, or you have a question type where you have all the 5 sentences jumbled for you. You will find that there are certain strategies which can be used. So we'll be just discussing them after we have, touched upon the different question types. So here, if I have the first sentence and the last sentence as fixed, naturally I know my opening sentence and the sentence where I have the author's opinion, okay, or more of a conclusion, it has been fixed for me. So all I can do is I can play around these 4 sentences. So I can look for pairs, a pair with the first sentence, right, which can be paired with the opening sentence here, and a pair with the last sentence, that is the closing one. Okay, this is what we are looking for. Okay, and of course we can unjumble the 4 sentences which are there in the mid. Okay, so what exactly are we supposed to do? How do we go about solving these questions? Okay, so one of the question types I told you is 4 or 5 sentences jumbled. So when you have all sentences jumbled, okay, in case of all sentences jumbled, there is one way of looking for the introductory sentence. Okay, you always look for the introductory sentence or the opening sentence. So this is a sentence which gives you a window to the entire context, which lays the background for you, and then as you dive deep, the idea gets from very generic sentence to moving towards a specific story. And of course, as you move towards the end, again the entire structure becomes a little generic. So this is the structure we can follow for looking out for an opening sentence. It should be a little generic. As you move towards the main context, that's where the main point lies. That's a specific part of the paragraph. And then comes a generic sentence again where you find conclusion or the opinion of the author being shared. Okay, so this is one of the strategies where you can always go from generic to specific. The second thing we can always look for is chronology. Okay, the second thing we've talked about is chronology. When we say chronology, it's more about time, right? And if we are looking for time, it is also about the past, present, and future. Okay, so we can always look for sentences which are talking about last 5 years, in the last month, this was the sale, this was the revenue generated, right? Coming on to the past 5 years data, this is what we can hypothesize on the basis of this is what we can come to a conclusion on. So anything that talks about past has already happened, so naturally that should come first. Okay, then what is currently happening? So presently, currently, nowadays, today, all those sentences which start with an opening word for current situation that lies after the past sentences. And if we have anything which talks about planning 5 years down the line, a decade from today, where do we see ourselves? So all these things where we have something on the basis of future, will the government will be planning for it, the budget will be released by the next week, right? So future is always at the end. This is where you are somewhere hypothesizing on the basis of something which hasn't happened yet, right? So it is to follow, so that should come towards the end, right? Similarly, if you have some dates being shared, okay, when we talk about dates, say something started in 1991, right, and then we have some data of it happening in 2000, and then something in maybe 2020, and then maybe 2025. Okay, so naturally the idea of the sentences should follow. The first sentence that takes 1991 should be the first one. Then you can maybe talk about 2000, 2020, and 2025, right? So chronology is not just about time in terms of date. It can also be past, present, future. It can also be events which are being shared, right, which we get to know through the context of the sentence being laid. Okay, so chronology is a big factor which helps us in figuring out the tense, or figuring out the structure of the sentences, which sentence should follow after what. Okay, and post this, of course, we can have some pronouns which we can look at, and pronouns could be, he, she, they, it. So these are the specific pronouns which you can find. For example, there's a character being shared, Mr. John Keats wrote in one of his poems some XYZ thing, okay? And then he ventured into literature in the year something something. Okay, so this he is going to be used for this character, Mr. John Keats, which has been shared here. But naturally, we need to know this, that this character should have been introduced in the sentence first. Only then can I use, a pronoun for that particular character. So that is extremely crucial to understand that pronouns, they should have their antecedents in place first. Only then can we use the pronouns for them. Okay. Similarly, if we are using articles, it also helps in figuring out, um, if I'm using articles, and I should know there's definite articles, there's indefinite articles. So if I'm using the, right, so it is being used for anything specific stated. Whereas if I'm using a or an, so naturally this is for anything in general, right? So this is important to understand, that if there's an article being used, what does it refer to? Is it the specific thing, or a and an in general, right? Similarly, there could be some miscellaneous things. Okay, miscellaneous means if I'm talking about number of factors, on which occurrence of rain is dependent, for example, or some reasons for water clogging to happen in a particular area or a society, right? So it starts with firstly, then secondly, right, thirdly, and then moreover, more to it to add to this. So naturally, if it is firstly, secondly, thirdly, we know the numbering that helps us in understanding, which sentence should fall first. So these are the basic rules which we can follow when we are trying to figure out the sentence. Also, guys, when we talk about parajumbles for theta, like specifically for cat, right? So cat has been giving shooting questions, parajumble questions under theta. Theta is type in the answer type, wherein you are not given any options. That is, the question type is going to be totally subjective. Okay, it is totally subjective. We do not have any options. So there will be sentences given to us, right? And there will be a box given to us where we'll have to enter. We'll have to type our answer. That's why it is theta type question. The only benefit of this question type is that you're not penalized in terms of your marks, right? So even if you mismark it, there is no negative marking for it. But the hidden side, the hindsight of it, where you do not realize that there is a penalization, that is, you tend to invest in a lot of time on one single question where we get stuck and we do not even have the options to verify, to vet whether we are actually on the right track or not, right? So I would suggest that we do invest time, but only to a certain limit, we maybe spend some 40 to 50 seconds, and max 1 minute. If you're not able to figure out the answer in, we need to hop on to the next question, marking whatever field the best is. Okay, I mean, typing in whatever we feel the best, but not being swayed away emotionally that I've spent already 2 minutes on the one question, and I still need to think whether it's B, C, A, D, E, or is it C, B, A, D, E. That one single sequence itself is very, confounding at times. So don't get misled with that emotion when you are under time pressure. So always limit yourself, time yourself, that I'm only going to spend 1 minute, not more than 1 minute on one particular question if I know that, even if it seems tricky to me. So this is very, very important to take note of, that people tend to invest in more time than they think they should, ideally. And since it does not penalize you in terms of your marks, of course, you should try to answer it correctly. But when we know that we have just spent too much time in it, we should be wary of the time limitation, the time management while we're solving the question, right? So, CATs almost, 25% of the paper, or I would say 8 questions out of 24 questions, are going to be under data. So we have to make sure that we practice this structure of questions really well, this section of the question very well, the data type questions. We will be having parajumbles, we will be having odd man out, right? Which is nothing but odd one out, odd man out. This is also an extension of parajumble itself, where you need to find the family, of the sentences. Maybe say B, C, D, and E lies together, and A is the odd man out, right? So we get an understanding of it better once we've solved some questions on it. Okay, so this is one side of it. Then there can also be a question type wherein you are supposed to figure out the last sentence, right? Last sentence is missing, or para completion, right? So para completion is about figuring out the last sentence which can complete, that one sentence in the last paragraph. I mean, the paragraph which is given to you. So these are some of the question types which we should practice, and I will make sure that we keep practicing them together. Today, since we have parajumbles, so let's get started with this question, guys. I'll show you the structure of the question. I haven't given any options so far for this question. These are 5 sentences which are jumbled for you. Okay, so this is parajumble for you. These are 5 sentences which are jumbled for you. You are supposed to figure out the sequence. In case you're not able to, I'll show you some options as well. Right? So please have a look at the question, and once you're done reading, I'll give you 1 minute maybe to solve it. Try to figure out in your own the sequence. You can try sharing in the chat box your answers, and then we'll be wetting whether the question has been very well understood. Have we sequenced the sentences in a coherent, meaningful paragraph, or is it just going haywire? Okay, so try to figure out what is the protagonist of the sentences. What is that main thing which should come up as an answer choice here, or the opening sentence at least. We should be able to figure that out. The most generic sentence which introduces the idea here. Okay, so I'm giving you quick 30-40 seconds, and then we discuss the question. Please have a look at the question. All right, can we have a look at the question? I hope it was not a very tough one. Can you help me with the opening sentence here? What should be the opening sentence, guys? It says, In simple terms, it is the Indian version of the Razzies. Okay. The third Golden Kela Awards will be hosted by Cyrus Brokwa this year. It was created in order to ridicule the bad performances and as a revenge for wasting our precious time and money on such idiotic films. The Golden Kela is held each year where awards are given for the year's worst in Bollywood. It was created by Random Magazine, India's longest running humor magazine in the year 2000. Okay, 2009. So, again, where do you find is the opening sentence? We're talking about third Golden Kela Awards. Okay. And fourth one does talk about Golden Kela with an introduction. It says Golden Kela is held each year where awards are given for the year's worst in Bollywood. Okay. So this one talks about Golden Kela is held each year where awards are given to the year's worst. It would be the movie we are talking about, the character, right? Bad performances. So fourth sentence should be the opening sentence here. Okay. Is held each year where awards are given for the year's worst in Bollywood. What can be the next sentence? I'm giving you the options to look at. I'm sure you should be able to figure out. It should be option number 1 here, right? So it is fourth, and then you have a simplification to it, right? It is the Indian version of the Razzies. Okay. Then it says it was created by Random Magazine. We can't say it was created in order to. Why was it created is later, but who created it, right? So DAE, and then you have it was created in order to. Why was it? This is who created it. This is why was it created, and eventually you have that the third Kela Awards will be hosted. So will be is referring to future, right? And I told you whenever it's a future tense, we always use a sentence which refers to future. We'd always be keeping it towards the end, right? So it should be DACB. That should be the correct sequence. I hope we got the sentence answer right. The correct sequence has to be DACB. How do we get this? We know the opening sentence is Golden Kela is held each year. It's like an opening sentence which says that every year it's being held where awards are given for year's worst in Bollywood, year's worst movie. Okay, then what is it? It is nothing but an Indian version of Razzies. We try to explain it further in A. Then E says, why was it created? Right? C says, was created in order to ridicule the bad performance. What is the relevance? Why? And then eventually comes the third Kela Awards, which will be hosted this year. Right? So we have DACB as the final sequence. I hope everybody got the context right. Let's move ahead to the next question now. Okay, so this is the understanding in case you'd want to have. We can move ahead to the next now. Please have a look at this question. This might seem a little tricky, which it is indeed. Once you're done with this, then we'll be discussing it. Giving you 40 seconds again, guys. All right. Do you want us to look at the option, guys? Please have a look at the options and try to figure out the correct answer in case you were not able to. Okay. So yes, the answer is A again. Okay. It should be A again, BCEAD. That is what we can see as the correct answer is. What is the opening sentence here? It says, despite the strong performance of economy in 2010-11, the outlook for 2011-12 is clouded by stubborn and persistently high inflation and rising external risks. Okay, so though economy performed well in 2010-2011, outlook for 11 to 12 is clouded by stubborn and persistent high inflation. It's like the inflation is going to be high. Like that's what it's been in the last year. It's still going to be the same. And rising external risk are the reasons. Three macroeconomic concerns before the union budget 2011-12 were high inflation, high current account deficit, and fiscal consolidation. Okay, so this seems to be giving a background that what are the three macroeconomic concerns about the union budget. Right now, it's the budget 25-26, but let's go back to history and then we see it's talking about the like almost more than a decade back budget 11 to 12. What were the three main points of concerns? Okay. Additionally, there was an expectation that the government would restart the reform process. While the budget sets a lower nominal gross domestic product GDP growth target of 14%, we believe that the GDP target of 9% factored in the budget is on the optimistic side. The budget has made an attempt to address all these issues, although through small steps. Okay. So, of course, option is BCEAD, which is the correct one. And we were able to figure out that B is the opening sentence. Post this, what do we do? Three economic factors. Expectation that the government would restart the reform process is also there. Right? This could be the fourth factor. Right? Then the budget has made an attempt to address all these issues, although there are through small steps. So we have E. And then it says, despite the strong performance, this is what we get to see. Right? So we have A, and then eventually, while the budget sets a lower nominal domestic product, GDP, domestic product, we're talking about gross domestic product, we believe that the real GDP is going to target on the optimistic side close to 9%, right? So while the budget sets a lower nominal gross domestic product growth target of 14%, we believe that the real is going to be less than that. It's going to be target of 9% factored in the budget is on the optimistic side. So BCEAD is the correct sequence we have. I hope everybody is good with the question, guys. In case you have any doubts, please let me know. Otherwise, we move ahead to the next one. Okay. So B is the opening sentence. Independent introduces the three main problems. That is the three factors which are introduced here. Inflation, the current account deficit, and the fiscal consolidation. And then these issues in E are the issues mentioned in B and C. So that's how it clubs. Eventually followed by B and followed by C. Okay. So BCE is the mandatory pair which we could see here. All right. Let's move ahead to the next one. Giving you again 30-40 seconds, guys. Have a look at the question. Let me know once you're done. I'll show you some options. We can have a poll for it and then we discuss the question. Quickly, 40 more seconds, guys. All right, guys, I'm showing you the options now. Please have a look at the options. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, guys, the answer is the option number four, that is TBAEC. I hope everybody picked up the correct answer choice, right? It's going to start with the pudding seems to have two principal forerunners. So it's an introduction. Okay. Now I need to go ahead to first one. I told you the miscellaneous option we covered, it's the same, right? So the first were the earliest mince pies, which saw cooked shredded meat, dried fruits, alcohol with its preservative qualities, and perhaps a few species, spices or herbs, all encased in large pies. Right. So we start with D, then we go ahead to B. Now, can I go for the second one now? Second main pudding, right? That is what we have. But it also has these were mainly bulk works against winter. So what is given in B is further explained in A. Okay. So we're talking about first were earliest mince pies which saw cooked shredded meat, dried alcohol with preservatives qualities, perhaps a few spices or herbs all encased in large pies. These were mainly bulk works against water, the hoarded dregs of more plentiful seasons. Okay. Then you have E, which says the second main pudding was a pottage, right? And last of all, subsequently, people baked this into a kind of pie, adding breadcrumbs for bulk, eggs to bind it, and upping the dried fruits and called it plum pudding. Okay. So DBAEC is the final sequence we get. I hope this one is clear again. Right, so I'll explain it again to you. What we do here is we just look, these were mainly bulk walks against winter. So what is these referring to? The first were the earliest, so it's explaining something. Subsequently people baked what? The pudding seems to have had two principal forerunners. Okay, so it starts with pudding. So answer is the fourth one, which is the opening sentence, seem to have two principal forerunners. What are the two principles? The first one is this mince pie. So DB naturally is a pair. Okay, points we have is these were the first ones, and these were mainly bulk works against winter. So we have DBA. Then you have second pudding was a pottage or soup. You explain the second and further say subsequently people bake this into a kind of pie. Okay, so DBA EC is the final sequence we get. So I hope everybody answered the fourth sentence as the correct one. All right, let's quickly have a look at this particular question. Please let me know if you're done reading. I'll show you the options for this. Okay, here are the options. Quick 30 seconds, answer in the chat box, guys, and I'll explain to you why is it a certain option. All right, so answer is again D for this, DEACB. We'll check how. Okay. It says in a bid to placate the associate members, the ICC has decided to increase the number of participating teams to 16, that is 2020 World Cup. As the game's governing body feels these countries will have a greater chance of competing on an equal footing in cricket's shortest format. Right? So they're playing on a bid. They're trying to placate as in to calm down the associate members so that they don't hype a lot on this. आईसीसी has decided to increase the number of participating teams कि हम teams को increase कर देंगे आपका money जो है वो invested waste नहीं होगा. We'll have better players. It is convenient just now to forget that this edition of tournament considerable criticism has heaped on the governing body. It's like it's accumulating on the governing body for the inordinate length of the tournament, thanks in large part to the presence of the associates. To be fair to the ICC, criticism of the move to restrict the number of teams in the next edition of the Cup is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. The ICC's decision to restrict the number of teams in 2015 World Cup has evoked mixed responses with opinion dividend among players of full member teams. Not surprisingly, the associate members aren't too thrilled about the idea of being kept out to cricket's showpiece event. Okay, so again we start with the ICC's decision. What are we talking about in the entire context? It's the ICC's decision which we are not really convinced with, right? To restrict the number of teams in 2015 has evoked mixed responses. Now, what are the responses, right? So we need to discuss that. So we start with D, and then mixed responses with with opinion divided among players, right? So naturally, what is that response? Not surprisingly, associate members aren't too thrilled. That is one of the response you see about the idea of being kept. It's like an extension of what is given in D, right? So D, E, and then it is convenient to just now to forget. Now this is more like a solution, what we can do. But before the solution, do other sentences also talk about such response? And what was the response given by ICC? So in a bid to placate the associate members, ICC has decided to increase the number of participating teams. पहले तो वो परेशान है, mixed response मिल रहा है. Associated members aren't too thrilled. They're not very excited about the idea of keeping up the cricket showpiece event, right? So we have A, to placate them, what has been done, right? Then it says to be fair to the ICC, criticism of the move to restrict the terms number of teams in the next edition of Cup is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So C, and then you have B. It is convenient just now to forget that the last edition of tournament, considerable criticism was heaped on governing body of the inordinate length of the tournament. So DEA CB is the final sequence, which we could see is the correct one. I hope this was clear, guys. I hope everybody is on the same page, getting the answers right. If yes, let's move to the next one. So you can also go to the solution. The paragraph talks about ICC's decision to restrict the number of teams, response that it evoked. It's introduced in sentence D. One hand, ICC was criticized because of the inordinate length of the tournament, and now it is criticized when it wants to reduce the number of teams. So DEAC is what the sequence follows here, and then eventually B shows the other side of the coin, right? This is the next question. Spend another quick 30 seconds to maybe 1 minute. Look at the options. Once you're done with the question, I'll show you the options and then we can figure out. It doesn't seem to be very tough question though. You can say it talks about environment education unit, right? Their new publication, it unfolds two sections. So naturally now you'll be looking for these two sections, right? However, is a contradiction. So try to put these pieces into one, context in a sequential manner so that we can get something meaningful read out of that particular paragraph. Okay, take another 30 seconds, then we discuss. Okay, let me show you the options. I hope this was clear. Please have a look at the options and tell me what's the correct answer. Guys, I'm sorry, I was on mute. I just checked it. Yeah. Okay, I'll explain it to you again. So, in the sentence, we started the Environmental Education Unit of Center for Science and Environment has always been working towards providing easy to understand reading material. Okay, so we start our sentence with the first sentence because this is where you find the introduction. Okay, this is where the introduction to entire sentence lies, that Environment Education Unit of Center for Science and Environment has always been working towards providing easy to understand reading material. Now, why is that reading material easy? We get to see that in second sentence. The new publication on this subject is an attempt to lend teachers a helping hand. So how is it a helping hand? How is it lending a helping hand? That's our question. How? Right? So that how is it here? It unfolds two sections: climate change, how to make sense of it all, and natural resources, how to share and care. So C and D can be clubbed together. Okay. We do have A B sentence here, but then C D can be clubbed together, right? And then we have, however, they are introduced to students not as a paragraph to memorize, but as an activity to do, right? So this is also something which is going beyond the scope. So A, B, C, D, E, these are the five sentences we got. And of course, they should be as one sequence, okay? Environment Education Unit of Center, the new publication of the subject is an attempt to lend teachers a helping hand. How is it lending a helping hand? By the two sections, climate change and natural resources. But it says, however, they're introduced to students are not as a paragraph to memorize, but as an activity to do, right? So, up, if I ask you, out of these five sentences, which of the following sentences odd one out? Can you guys help me with this? 20 seconds for this, guys. Quick answer. Yeah, so we have two sorts of families here. If we look at, we have A, B, C, D, E. Okay. We have this section A, B, C, D, E, and could be this B, C, D, E, right? So A, B, C, D, E, this could be one sentence, like one family, when we look at this part. But can we start with B, C, D, E? Definitely not. We need an introduction. We need to talk about, environmental education unit of center. So naturally, A, B, C, D should be together, and E is the odd man out. I could see most of you answered it correctly. Yes, the answer has to be E echo, which is the odd man out, because it talks about a contradiction. They're introduced to students not as a paragraph to memorize, but an activity to do. So why would I talk about how and what kind of impact does it create on students? It's anyway not my forte here, right? I do not have to check upon what impact it does to students. I'm talking about how is it a helping hand to teachers, and that has been reflected on the climate change and the natural resources. Okay, moving to the next now. So this is a sequence, guys. Environmental education was the introduction here. Therein sentence refers to the same, then mandatory pair of C and D as we discussed, and then however concludes the paragraph. Okay, let's have a look at this question. Probably the last question we'll be having a look at for today. Please quickly have a look at the question, guys, then we discuss this. All right, guys, can we move ahead to the options? I'll show you the options very quickly. Tell me which one were you able to pick, and then we discuss it. Perfect. So let's have a look at the question together. I hope everybody answered it correctly. So answer has to be A for this. It's ACEBD, right? Because it starts with Japanese rock garden. Okay. How do we get the sequence as ACEBD? Famous Japanese rock garden is at Ryoanji in northwest Kyoto, Japan. The rocks of various sizes are arranged on small white pebbles in 5 groups, each comprising 5, 2, 3, 2, and 3 rocks. Garden is 30 meters long from east to west and 10 meters from north to south. The garden contains 15 rocks arranged on the surface of white pebbles in such a manner that visitors can see only 14 of them at once from whichever angle the garden is viewed. And there are no trees, just 15 irregularly shaped rocks of varying sizes, some arranged by gravel sand that is raked every day. So again, looking for the opening sentence, we need to name the garden which we're talking about, right? We're talking about the garden everywhere, but which garden, what sentence, gives us a reference to it? It's the first sentence. So A comes as the opening sentence. Okay. Famous garden is at Japan. Now, I can't straight away start with the rocks. What I can definitely start is talking about the garden first. So, garden is 30 meters long, northeast, east to west, and then north to south, right? So, this is what the description lies. So, we have AC. Then comes, there are no trees, just 15 irregular shaped rocks. So, I'm introducing rocks here. It's an introduction to rocks. And then maybe an extension of what are there in rocks. Rocks of various sizes are arranged on small white pebbles. And then you have D, which says contain 15 rocks arranged on the surface of white pebbles. So ACEBD is the final sequence we have. Okay, so this is how we tackle the questions, guys. I hope this was not a very tough question to tackle with, and I hope the session was not very tough. In case you would have more questions around this, I would love to take them up in the next session as well. Also, I would recommend that you practice more parajumble questions on your own first. When we meet next, of course, we will be practicing more CAT paper questions and other questions of CAT level itself, some questions from mock as well. But in the meantime, since we know the concepts, we know how to understand, where the tonality of a sentence is going, how to relate the character which has been introduced in the first sentence with the next one. We can try when we read, try to figure out, okay, this is what I read so far. What could be the next following sentence? Try to anticipate when you practice your reading skills. And even when you write the summary of the passages, as I always asked you, right, make sure that you know the story what you're trying to create, right? So that anticipation would help you in arranging these sentences in a proper sequence. Okay. So parajumbles is not just about looking at the sentences and understanding, but the moment you read the first sentence, you should be able to figure out that if it's talking about a bank's policy, which bank is it talking about? It should be introduced in the first sentence itself. If not, maybe in the next sentence. When was the policy introduced? What is the policy about? Why was it introduced? So all of those questions should follow, and they should come to your mind the moment you are done reading about that bank, right? And that should happen very naturally, very logically. So this is what we are looking for from the questions as well. We do have more questions which we can probably solve in the next few sessions, guys. I hope this would be good if we practice it in the next few sessions, similar questions. Just to take you through solution given here, option A, as we said, Japanese rock garden is the correct one. C further defines the structure of the garden. So AC was a pair here, right? As I told you, that garden is 30 meters, so it's an extension of it. So we have 1 and 3, AC as a pair here. And then it says EB both define the structure of the rock, so that also comes together. And eventually we have D, which talks about 15 rocks arranged in a particular manner. Okay, so this is what we had for today. I would love to meet you guys very soon in the next session. Make sure that you've practiced well, you've read well, and by the time you meet me in the next session, you've practiced some more questions from the previous mocks, maybe. That should help you to at least, be able to crack a few questions which we'll be covering in the next few sessions on Parajumbles. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day. Have a great week ahead. We'll catch up very soon. Thank you so much.